welcome to yet another episode of Coffee with Me. You can tell it's a school day because I have dressed up for the occasion, okay, and I've actually combed my hair for the first time in about 3 weeks, okay. I'm just trying to angle this in the best way that you can actually see it without the glare, okay. I think that's probably the best thing you can do, okay, and hopefully I will make this, I'll try and illuminate the ideas. Basically, what we're trying to do today is we're trying to do the theory of comparative advantage. So for those of you who already studied this, you know that this is the theory according to David Ricardo, who was a very famous kind of classical economist in the late 19th century. And he's kind of the economist that has been given the credit for devising free trade theory, the reason why economics can justify free trade, the benefits of free trade. So he did it with this theory of comparative advantage, and we'll get into that today. In order to participate with Coffee with Mr. Vito, you need to go and grab yourself a cup of coffee. If you can make it as economicsy as mine, all the better. All right, and then with me, we're going to do the synchronized sip, and that is still going to be the best part of your day. So go and grab yourself your favorite liquid in a cup, a mug, or a glass. Come back to me, and here we go. 1, 2, 3. I do love coffee. So comparative advantage. Regardless of whether you've done this before, whether it's revision or you're learning this for the first time, you need a definition. Okay. Comparative advantage, then, as I've got up there, is when one country can produce a particular product at a lower opportunity cost than another country. And it's that key phrase, that's the reason that I put it in capital letters there, lower opportunity cost, okay? Economics is always about the study of alternatives. It's always coming back to this idea of opportunity cost. What else could I have done with my resources? What other decision, what other choice could I have made? So in this scenario, I've very originally come up with two countries that I'm going to call Georgistan, which is an Asian country, and Thomasland, which is a North European country. Okay, and they both make two things. Economics, remember, simplifies models to explain the complexities of human behavior. So instead of making lots of different things, we only make two goods. We only make books and we make coffee. These two figures then basically says how many of these items can they make if they put all of their resources into making them. So if we were fully specialized, for example, how many books could we make? And if we were fully specialized, how many coffees we could make? So these aren't, I can make 200 books and 1,000 coffees. No, it's 200 books if I put all my resources into books, or it's 1,000 coffees if I put all my resources into coffee. What we have down here then is a PPF which illustrates this idea. If I'm fully specialized, I would make 200 books and no coffees, a coordinate point of 200,0, and over here a coordinate point of 1,000, 1,000 coffees, 0, which would indicate if I put all my resources into coffee, I would make 1,000 coffees but no books. Every other point on the line says that if I split my resources in some combination, then these are the combinations of products I can make. I can't go outside of the line because I don't have enough resources. So, for example, at the moment, unless I embark on some supply side policies and shift my long-run average aggregate supply curve to the right, there is no way that Georgistan can make 1,000 coffees and simply doesn't have the resources to do that. We draw it as a straight line. Well, the theory says that we draw it as a straight line because we assume perfect factor substitutability. The real reason that we draw a straight line is because the theory simply won't work if we draw a curved line, okay? I think in week 1 economics we said, though, that actually straight line PPFs don't really illustrate the real world particularly well, and in real life they are probably more curved. But for the sake of David Ricardo's theory on comparative advantage, we will keep it as a straight line. Because it's a straight line, then you could work this out as a linear function, okay? Y equals mx plus c, or in this case, b equals mc plus c. Just bear with me 1 second whilst I tell my girls to, they have already, good for them. You could work out every point on here because there would be a constant ratio. Yep. Maybe some of you can already see this, But as I move up 1 unit on the y-axis, or the books column, how many would I be giving up from here? I'd be giving up 5. Maybe some of you can do that in your heads. Perhaps you can't. So one way you could do that is you could break this down into what's called an opportunity cost ratio. I can make 200 books or 1,000 coffees. I have made that now into a ratio that you should be familiar with from kind of pre-GCSE maths years. All right. Now I want to cancel that down just so I have 1 unit of books on that side. What I did was I divided that by 200. So whatever you do to that side, you should do to this side. 1,000 divided by 200 is 5 coffees. Now what that means is, as I said before, every time we move 1 unit up along that y-axis, the b-axis, we're going to move 5 in from the c-axis, the coffee axis. So for example, I know that there is a coordinate point here, 100, 500. I also know that there is a coordinate point here, 25, 750. And we could keep going 25, 750. Is that right? I think that's right. I'll tell you why that's right, okay? Because, no, that's wrong, isn't it? Terrible maths, okay? If I move in 250 here to 750, okay, I could plot that in there, okay? Sorry, I'm doing, this is a terrible illustration. I wasn't planning on doing this, but now I have. So I have lost 250 units from here. So how many did I gain there? Well, look, I had to times that. What did I times 5 by to get 250? I times it by 50. So I have to do the same to that side. So I get 50. So there is another coordinate point there. Hopefully, even though I made a terrible mistake there, you have seen that. So the fact that there is a straight line PPF means that we can actually plot all of those points onto the PPF. Now we come over to Thomasland then. Okay, Thomasland is not quite as well resourced as Georgetown. There aren't as many resources. So in Thomasland, even if they put all of their resources into books, they would only be able to make 100 books. Okay, so this is a global economic superpower here, and over here, not so much. Okay, a much smaller economy. You could think about this in terms of perhaps China and something like perhaps I don't know, Sweden or something like that. Okay, so if they put all their resources into books, in Thomasland they would only be able to make 100 books. If they put all of their resources into coffee, they would only be able to make 300 units of coffee. And therefore Thomasland comes out with this rather smaller piddly PPF compared to the big economic powerhouse that is Georgia. Now, you might look at this and say, well, they're clearly not going to trade because Georgistan can produce many, many more things than Thomasland, so why would they bother trading? You'd be wrong. This is the theory that David Ricardo came up with. He said, as long as there are different opportunity cost ratios, countries should definitely trade. So let's check that out. Let's work out the opportunity cost ratio for Thomasland then. So, if Thomasland made books, they could make 100 books. If they made coffee, they could make 300 coffees. Bear in mind, they can't make 100 books and 300 coffees because they don't have the resources to do that. We'll do exactly what we did here. We'll get books on one side of the equation, and to do that, I've got to divide by 100. So therefore, you would have 3 coffees there. So we have different ratios. In Georgistan, the opportunity cost of making a book is 5 coffees. I have to give up 5 coffees for every book that I make. In Thomasland, it's only 3 coffees. Okay? Therefore, who has the lower opportunity cost? Thomasland. In terms of making books, Thomasland has a lower opportunity cost. Thomasland is better in terms of the number of coffees that they have to sacrifice. Thomasland is better, has a lower opportunity cost in making books. So Thomasland has what we call comparative advantage in books. Now, if you've done this before, what you'll automatically realise, hopefully, because there's a rule here, is that if Thomasland has comparative comparative advantage in books, it must be true that Georgistan has comparative advantage in coffee. But for those of you who haven't done this before, let's just check this out. What I'm saying now is, let's rearrange that equation so we've only got one coffee on that side. Let's find out what the opportunity cost of making one coffee is. I've got to divide that by 5, so it would be 0.2 books. For every coffee that I make, I have to give up a fifth of a book. In Thomasland then, to get one coffee on this side, I've got to divide that by 3. So 0.333 would be every third of a book. I would encourage you to use decimals rather than fractions, okay? Because it's slightly more intuitive. Who has the lowest opportunity cost in coffee then? So in Georgistan, they're only giving up a fifth of a book. In Thomasland, they only have to give up a third of a book. Now, they're still very small numbers, but 0.2 is lower than 0.333 recurring. So Georgistan has comparative advantage in making coffee. So we are now part of the way through David Ricardo's. They're about halfway through. Okay, we have identified who has comparative advantage. Georgistan is better at making coffee. Thomasland is better at making books. Now, if we pause there, when I say better, I mean in terms of the opportunity cost. Obviously, Georgistan is better in terms of absolute numbers, in terms of the total number. But that's not comparative advantage. That's something called absolute advantage. And whilst it's true that Georgistan can make more things, that doesn't say anything about whether or not they should trade. To find out whether or not they should trade with other countries in the world, we have to look at comparative advantage. So the next stage of David Ricardo's theory, once you have identified opportunity cost ratios, is to say, right, that means then that Georgistan should specialize in the thing that they are best at, in this case, coffee. So Georgistan should produce here. All right, we can call it point Z. So Georgistan is going to put all their resources into making coffee. On the other hand, Thomasland, which is very, very good at making books in terms of the opportunity cost, okay, should specialize in the thing that they're good at, which is books. And in this case, they should therefore put all of their resources into books, and they're going to make 100 of them. Let's call it point Y. So we now have a world in which both countries in the world, and there are 2 countries in the world at this point, are specialising in the thing that they have comparative advantage in. And there are now 1,000 coffees in the world and 100 books in the world. The next thing that David Ricardo says is these guys should trade. So that both countries can have books and coffee, okay, they should trade. Now, when I have a little bit more time with each of you, what we'll do is we'll come up with a rule, okay? But I'm just going to come up, just for time-saving sake here, okay? We are going to trade. You've kind of dropped off here. The camera has dropped off here. I'm just going to say that these countries will now trade at a ratio of 1 book to 4 copies. The people who kind of see this earlier than others will notice that that is directly in the middle of these 2 opportunity cost ratios. Okay, I have chosen 1 book to 4 coffees. And because it's directly in the middle, actually both countries can benefit. Now let's have a look at that. Okay, so Georgistan was making 1,000 coffees. But let's say we give up 400 of those. Actually, let's not give up 400 of those. Let's give up 200 of those. I'm just doing the maths. I hadn't pre-prepared this, so I'm doing this on the spot. Okay, and I'm just noticing that won't work terribly well. Okay, so to get 200 from 4, I had to multiply by 50. So I'll do it to the other side as well. So we had 1,000 coffees. We are now trading 200 of those coffees away to Thomasland. That leaves us with 800 coffees. Okay, so again, I'll just pause there. We had 1,000 because we were specializing in making coffee, and that allowed us to make 800 coffees. Now, sorry, start again. We were making 1,000 coffees, but we're going to trade 200 of those coffees to Thomas Land, and in exchange, they will give us 50 books. So we now have 1,000 minus 200, 800 coffees, and 50 books, which will put us here. And it will put us outside of our PPF. And it will definitely be outside of our PPF. Because there's no way that we could have made that combination ourselves in Georgistan. So, for example, that was originally our opportunity cost ratio. So I know that actually, if I wanted 50, we did this earlier, actually that point there is 50, 750 there. Okay? So we are better off. We have, if we'd have stuck to our PPF, if we'd have just produced the things that we are able to produce, we would have only had 50 books and 750 coffees. Now, with trade, we can have 50 books and 800 coffees, which means we are consuming outside of our PPF. Okay, the total utility that our consumers is receiving is more than if we just stuck to domestic production. Trade has allowed us to consume outside of our PPF. We're still producing inside our PPF, but we are now consuming outside of our PPF. And the only reason that that's been allowed to happen is because we have traded the thing that we are good at for the thing that Thomas Land is good at. Standards of living in Georgistan are now higher because of trade. Let's have a look how that's working out for Thomas Land. So Thomas Land, remember, was making 100 books, just 100 books. They put all their resources into books. They're going to trade that 50 of them away, so that leaves them with only 50, because 100 minus 50 is just 50. They now have 100 books, but they're gaining those 200 coffees that we traded away from Georgistan have now gone to Thomas Land. So Thomas Land now has 200 coffees as well as 50 books, and they are also outside of their PPF. And there is no way that Thomas Land would have been able to do that, because with their original ratio of 1 book to 350, just 3 coffees, their PPF would have been 150. So they are now 50 coffees over what they would have been able to do themselves. So they are also able to consume outside of their PPF, and therefore they have a higher standard of living than what they would have done if they were just producing domestically. So people in Thomas Land are happy. People in Georgistan are happy. Because let me start again. David Ricardo basically said that if countries specialize in the things that they are best at being measured here by comparative advantage, if countries specialize in the things that they have comparative advantage in, and then trade at what is called a mutually beneficial trade ratio, okay? And I have come up with a mutually beneficial trade ratio there, okay? Both countries will be able to consume outside of their PPF. Their citizens will have higher standards of living than they would have done if their countries were just producing on their PPF, inside their PPF, okay, and not trading. Look, both countries are producing within their PPF. Both countries are now consuming outside of their PPF. And this is the key argument for free trade. Okay, even though this theory is now 150 years old, there are lots of assumptions here. Okay, and that it's only a simplified model. This is still the key argument in favor of free trade, that actually citizens in both countries will benefit in terms of being able to consume more. And if you can consume more, obviously you get more utility. Okay, consumers on both sides and both countries will have more utility than they previously did. They will be happier because of trade. Okay, there ends the lesson. Hopefully that made sense. Go back through it if you want, and then I will see you next time. Cheers then, bye.